We do something, and this is why we do our personality profiler training. I mean, it's an operational level of personality type.
Right.
It's designed to create a methodology where two people come together and they have a conversation and they help determine somebody's best fit type.
Yeah.
And it's designed to say, this isn't like crypto on a blockchain. This is like a currency in the moment. We're value exchanging. We're creating a moment here with each other.
Yeah.
And so I think that the value of personality type has to be found in the midst of it's going to get sucked into this algorithmic vortex of terribleness.
Yeah.
And it's going to get more tokenized and over defined, and it's going to lose its power and its actual usefulness because it's going to just get sucked into that world. There's so much more there. So I think our job here at Personality Hacker, and if you're listening right now, you're the third person in this, I think the three of us, our job is to find ways to operate personality type. Welcome back to the Personality Hacker podcast. My name is Joel Mark Witt.
And I'm Antonia Dodge.
Hi, Antonia.
Hi, Joel.
How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah? You doing good this week?
It's been a bit of a stressful week, but I'm all right.
I have to say, at the time of this recording, the United States is going through a pretty intense political environment, and it is hard to focus. It is hard to pay attention. You and I live in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania here at the time of this recording.
Yes.
It seems to be a very busy place to live these days. And, years from now, or even a couple weeks from now, this might seem very dated really quick.
It will seem dated quick, but my goodness, right now, it feels like
pretty intense.
It is a thick stew we are in the center of.
Pretty intense.
Politically.
So it's we're talking about like, okay, we need to record some podcasts. We need to write some articles. We need to get some things done. And man, I'm having a hard time being present to my life. Just so many distractions. Everybody's upset and focused on things.
Well,
it's just like
the
impossible.
Canvassing is crazy. I think we have somebody knocking on our door probably almost every day or hanging something on our doorknob.
Yeah.
Every piece of media that I consume has multiple campaign ads.
I just spilled my tea on myself. That's how bad it's going.
That's how bad it is.
I just missed my mouth or something.
I don't feel like we can go anywhere without just getting inundated with messaging and it's like, I mean, I get it. We're, like you said, we're in Pennsylvania, which at the time of this recording is considered what for those of you in the future, if our government completely collapses, we're in what's called a swing state.
Or if people watching this, not sure why you're watching this one, but
or if you're around the world and you're not interested in, and understandably you're not interested in United States politics. A swing state basically means that we're one of the very few states that could go either direction.
I'm expecting most people in the world can't escape even this.
Oh my goodness, I know.
All right, enough of this. I don't want to date this podcast
Too much. What's the point, Joel?
The point is, this was a tough podcast to get ourselves to record because there's just so much pulling at us.
Ugh.
So I just want to own that at the beginning.
Yeah, it's been tough to be introspective.
Yeah.
Like the world is very distracting and pulls our attention towards it.
So I guess with that in mind, in the midst of this chaos and turmoil, it's hard to stay on mission and on purpose in life. Like, I mean, we do this not because this was the best business to start as far as making money and success goes. There's probably a million other things we could do that would be a more successful thing to do, like just on a pure, business or money-making endeavor. So we chose this because we care about it.
Yeah.
We think it's important. We like it. We're interested in it. And in some ways, personality types and helping people understand who they are is a little bit of our purpose in life. I think we have a bigger purpose than just Personality Hacker, both you and myself, Antonia, as a couple and individually. But this definitely is part of the pathway toward what I think both of us are here to bring to the world, or at least we want to bring to the world. Yeah.
If we were smart business people, we would make widgets.
Yeah.
We'd make whatever widget the world needs more of, or it doesn't need but thinks it needs.
Yeah.
And even if those widgets ended up in landfills, like that would be the good money making.
15 years ago, Duck Dynasty products.
Yeah.
Those sold really well.
My goodness, didn't they?
I bet the landfills and thrift stores are filled with them now.
Yeah, I think people in the future that...
Remember the Duck Dynasty stuff like from 15 years ago here in the U.S.?
Totally. And I think people in the future are going to believe that Duck Dynasty played a much bigger part of that decade.
It did, Antonia.
It's like they seem to worship people who hunted ducks
and duck calls.
and made duck calls.
It's like the Egyptians, we got it totally wrong about the cats.
Oh,
yeah. Totally wrong about they worship ducks. They were deifying ducks. They even had these little calling things. Yeah, that's what they're going to do in the future, I'm sure.
We always go back to Duck Dynasty, though. I think we've made this joke multiple times throughout the last 10 years on the podcast because
have we?
It really struck me one time when I was walking through, and I think it's probably been like 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I was walking through a Walmart, which is a store for those of you in the future. Do we need to keep making notes and footnotes for people in the future?
No, I think it's
anyway. So a Walmart, I guess you'll have to look that up, people in the future. So we were walking through a Walmart, and it was just like floor to ceiling Duck Dynasty merchandise, and I'm like, just everything in me groaned because
welcome mats.
Yeah,
coffee mugs,
not because
chains.
Yes, this is merch.
Trash
so thank
cans. No, it's just like everything.
This is all example of merch.
Go on.
Yes,
I won't, but I could.
All right. So it made me groan, not because I had an opinion on Duck Dynasty, which I did not, but because as soon as the fad was over, I'm like, this is all going in landfills. All of the, and of course, most everything is plastic these days. So I'm like, all these plastics are going to end up in landfills. Awesome. Because nobody's going to care about Duck Dynasty. But at the same time, the people who are capitalizing off on that meme, on that wave, probably made a mint. So that's the smarter play for making money. But we're not smart people when it comes to that. We're people with a purpose, and this is a much more difficult thing to sell.
Well, many of our podcasts will avoid the landfill. Let's hope.
Yeah, we won't be in a landfill, hopefully.
I mean, we don't make physical things that can't destroy the environment, so I think that's good too.
Yes.
Mostly digital.
Well, we do actually make one physical item, which are the playing cards, the profiling cards, which I actually think are pretty cool.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I wish more people got a deck of profiling cards.
Mm-hmm.
We have some readings that we can showcase with these. There are different ways to look at your car model or personality. In fact, if you're interested in this, I'm glad you said it. Here's my advert.
Yeah.
In the middle of a podcast, go over to personalityhacker.com/cards.
Mm-hmm.
And you can look and see the card deck we have available. Maybe even by this time in the future, if you're listening, there's even more card decks available or other things that are physical in nature. Because I do think that tangible physical things are important.
I do too.
But they need to be tools, something that's useful. Something like I don't have a problem with a Duck Dynasty coffee mug if you carry it with you and drink coffee out of it.
If you're still drinking out of it,
yeah, but
absolutely.
But something that's like you ever see those singing fish at Christmas time that it's like this is gonna be in a landfill someday, right? I'm not saying Duck Dynasty did that, but
yeah,
I don't know. Duck calls are useful,
and cards are paper, not plastic, so
True.
We're okay.
And they're useful.
That said, it's a bit of a lift doing this business, and it gets. I would actually argue that this gets more difficult over time, particularly for us. And I'm not sure how we're going to solve this problem in the future or this challenge. I know you don't like the word problem, Joel, so I'll use the word challenge, which is your preferred word. But I'm not 100% sure how we're going to solve this because at the time of this recording, there are new gods on the scene called algorithms. And these algorithms determine whether or not your content is going to be presented in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
And algorithms seem to like people who stay on a single subject, and they say they stick with that, and they just fillet that out, and they just talk about that same thing over and over and over. Now, the only people who get away with not doing that are people whose topic, quote unquote, is maybe celebrities. Mm-hmm. So they can talk about a wide variety of different issues and topics because it's actually whatever's going on for the celebrity that they're interviewing that's the actual, sort of algorithmic element.
Yeah.
But if you're not interviewing celebrities, then your job is to stay on a single topic. And we struggle with that. We both have extroverted intuition or exploration as our driver dominant function.
Yeah.
We like to go broad and wide. We like different models. We don't just like Myers-Briggs type. We tend to talk a lot about cognitive functions, the Jungian cognitive functions, but we also like to talk about other Jungian topics and things of interest to us. So we don't always play nice with algorithms. And then on top of that, in the last, I would say probably 3 years especially, attention spans in content hasn't just shrunk, it's all but disappeared.
Yeah.
There is a massive push to put 60-second clips on almost everything. And I mean, I'm lucky if I can get a thought out in like 3 to 5 minutes. 60 seconds is way too short for me.
We'll certainly have to dumb the thoughts down and make them more simple.
Yeah.
Like trading them like trading cards.
Yeah.
The 60-second clip is like a trading card thought.
Yeah, exactly.
The baseball cards, when we were kids growing up, kids used to trade baseball cards.
Right.
And that's how I see 60-second clips. It's like one little, very, very simple idea, or maybe 3 ideas with somebody dancing, pointing at like words on a screen or something.
Is that still a thing?
I don't know, but I've seen that before. But so I think it's a very small, short window you have. And it's basically like a headline. You can grab attention.
Yeah.
But what I've been noticing and I've read some information to back this up, the idea was that, well, somebody would see your short and some of the headline content, like a real core idea, and then they would follow over to the main channel. But what they found is that short viewers stay with shorts on YouTube, for example, and longer form stays with longer form. Which
makes sense because most people are just scrolling.
Yeah.
Right. They just want to do 60-second. And if you're in entertainment, that's actually really interesting.
Yeah.
Like a 60-second clip with entertainment it's actually in some ways a brilliant idea to convey a concept in a minute that's humorous. I actually think that it works perfectly for anything comedic. But anything that's actually supposed to try to like get into the soul of something, to actually do some thought labor, really fillet an idea out, 60 seconds is like you're warming up, right? And you're going to probably need like 5 minutes of warm up to really get into a very deep thought where you're thinking, you're learning how to think, not just what to think.
Yeah.
So that's a big struggle too. And I mean, we're Gen Xers, we're like old timers now, right? And back in our day, it was people who learned from others, like teachers, right? You found somebody who mastered a subject and you went and learned from a teacher.
Yeah.
The more contemporary way of talking about even the subject that we're in with type, the more contemporary way of doing it is we're all like sort of in this together and we're all learning together. So it's a lot of panels and a lot of like, well, I think this, and this is my opinion on this type. And what about you? And so it's a little less top down. It's more sort of, we all get to be experts at the same time, which is fine. I mean, I think learning together has a lot of value, but I also think that there's something to be said for people who have, sort of put the legwork in and figured a bunch of stuff out, sort of earn their stripes. So we come from a time period of earning your stripes. And that doesn't really seem to gel as much with more contemporary or modern audiences in terms of algorithms. So this is not the easiest time period for people like us to be doing this gig.
Well, I would argue that if you took the algorithms out, we'd be wildly successful.
Yeah,
I mean, I think, and a lot, and there's other people that would be too. So the algorithms help. I think what ends up happening is the algorithms are kind of equalizers. They do help people that couldn't have done it without them.
Yeah.
But they kind of punish people that can do it without them.
Right.
And so it kind of brings things to more equal. So they're in one way, if you look at an aggregate, if you zoom way out, it probably gives more people an opportunity on a wider breadth to be successful at things because it helps the content be found.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and then you just kind of, most people would love to be on one channel being fed the topic to be able to do. But the challenge is if somebody doesn't necessarily follow the algorithm framework like you and I, it actually it pulls us down and hurts us. So people like, for example, are subscribed to our YouTube channel and have the bell to give them alerts and they still don't see our content. They lament to us like, I'm subscribed. I have the bell. I don't see your stuff. Why is that? I actually want to see your stuff. Yeah. YouTube's not giving it to me.
Yeah.
So again, we also have our audio podcast, which we distribute through, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all these too. And I think there's a lot of people that just listen to the audio side of it. You may be one of those people right now, and you're just here with us with our voice. And we're just having a conversation together, basically, the three of us.
Yeah. Well, and I remember like we try to put those 60-second clips out so that we will be seen, because when we don't put them out, when we don't do those little quick, what are they called? Reels or shorts or
shorts on YouTube, reels on Instagram.
Okay. So when we don't do shorts on YouTube, our visibility drops.
We basically have zero TikTok presence at this point.
We don't have any TikTok. Yeah. We don't have any TikTok presence, but when we don't do that, they won't even present our longer form content.
Yeah.
And so we started doing that, but because like I mentioned, it's hard for either of us to say anything in 60 seconds that's meaningful at all. Multiple times people are like, I don't understand what this was about. Why did you even publish this? And why did you put this up? And at one point I said, because they won't present our long form content if we don't put these up. So we just, we try to find the highest quality 60 seconds of us talking, which is very difficult to do because it takes me 3 minutes to say anything. So, we have to put those up, even if they don't mean anything, even if they don't make any sense.
Yeah.
So that YouTube will also be presenting our longer form content. And it's like, it's kind of a catch-22.
So as we're talking, we can still maybe talk about purpose and dharma. We've done a lot of talking about algorithms and content and some of this. And I'd like to add a couple other thoughts around that before maybe we won't get to purpose and meaning stuff today. I don't know, or dharma. I don't know. Possibly.
The listener has no idea what you're talking about because that was our inside conversation.
Well, earlier in the podcast, I said, so today we're talking about purpose and how we find purpose possibly. When I mentioned that at the very beginning of the episode.
Oh, did you? I guess I just want to make sure that
somebody's like, well, I'm ready to get to that. I want to make sure, because that was our intent.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you set it up that way.
Our extroverted intuition has taken us a little bit of a different direction. And I'm wondering.
Yeah, let's just talk about whatever we want to talk about.
We're kind of deep into it now.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we could come back and maybe hit this as a second topic. I don't know.
Well, you know what we'll do? We'll see if we can't weave purpose in there someplace because we're pretty good at that.
So what I was actually going to mention here, and this is why I'm giving this to you before I change direction, because you're like, wait, that's going to take us a whole different direction possibly. It won't get to our topic. So I wanted to just give you that caveat, Antonia, in real time. Because again, we have some intent when we start these podcasts, but we definitely allow our intuition to guide us as we talk and what comes up. So it's always emergent, which I think we find value in, and I think our listeners and audience has as well.
And I have one more statement I want to make on all this too. So
sure. So if you look at the history of Western civilization in particular, and you could say maybe humanity, but I'll just take Western civilization. It has been a slow and steady process of democratization of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just having this moment the other day when I was thinking about, imagine you're in the 1500s when the printing press, the Gutenberg printing press is invented, right? We, as humans, we look at this as a very key moment in our entire existence, because pre-printing press, books had to be hand copied, like documents and scrolls had to be hand copied and passed around. And it was very slow and sluggish. Only a few people knew how to read. Usually it was in the church or some kind of like nation state people, like in government or serving a king or queen. Like only a few people had access to information. Information was very scarce. And if you look at from the printing press until now, it's been the democratization of information and its distribution. Mm-hmm. That's what we're just talking about with algorithms, right?
Yep.
But I was thinking about the other day, like, first of all, when the printing press was invented and we could publish books in mass, like movable type was invented, you still had to also have the populace learn how to read for that to be. That's the other side of the equation no one talks about, that it wasn't like, oh, the printing press is here and then they're selling books left and right. It took probably hundreds of years to get people up to speed to be able to read all these new things that are being printed. And I think that's where, when we come into the Enlightenment time period, right, in the thinkers and the people there, I think that was kind of the moment where enough critical mass of people had learned to read that now we're starting to get philosophies and ideas around, wait a minute, we don't have to be, the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. In fact, it's the other way around. And we're not the center of the universe. And wait, the earth isn't flat. Like, we're starting to understand, like, wait, stuff is very different than what we had thought up till now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was really important. So it wasn't just about the technology that was going out. It was also about the ability for people to read that technology.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and my hazy understanding of history from that time period, which is probably inaccurate and somebody's going to come correct me. But if basically the sense that I've always gotten when I think about that time period is if almost all of if transferring knowledge from one book to another, which was done, like you said, by hand, by scribes, right? That was the job. And scribes had been around for hundreds of years. If it was so precious, because at one point, like, paper was precious. And then at another point, like, ink was precious. And then just being able to take the time and effort to do all of that was precious. Then bound volumes were reserved for what they felt was crucial knowledge. I mean, there were little things here and there that were entertainment, but very little of what was written was for entertainment. Most of it was written because it was like, this is
the Bible.
That's
it was
right.
The first book printed, right? This is the most important book ever.
The most important thing that we as humans must pass on in our, in time binding all of this sacred information.
Yeah.
But what happened after the printing press, and even that Gutenberg press was pretty, that was And it was labor intensive.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Well, even Ben Franklin's press in like the 1700s is labor intensive. I've seen it in person in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And it's like you had to pull the type out by hand and then push the thing down each page at a time and then hang it to dry. I mean, talk about a time consuming process, but it's better than hand copying.
But it allowed for daily news even.
Yeah.
But it's way better than hand copying. And so at a certain point, then things weren't just written to educate or to be sacred. Now things could be written and then passed along that were like fun and interesting and even sometimes bawdy. And because of that gave more of an incentive for people to learn how to read or gave them easier things to learn on. And so you're right. They kind of grew together, like the mass distribution of the written word along with people's capacity to consume it sort of started to, to hockey stick up together.
Yeah. And I think it toppled power dynamics. So the Catholic Church was deeply threatened by this. I think the Reformation, a lot of the Reformation came from people being empowered to read the Bible on their own without having to go through a priest. Right. We see that history. Yep. The Enlightenment going, wait a minute, why are kings and queens deciding for us? Yep. Couldn't free people come together with philosophies and create ideas and nation states this way? Yep. And so we had this idea of nation states forming in like the 1700s, and so forth. Obviously, the United States where we live is one of those eventually that we got to. Out of Enlightenment thinking, like literally John Locke's ideas came into the Declaration of Independence and some of our founding documents. Yep. And so we see...
And we started getting daily news.
Daily news,
yeah, and we started getting information very quickly. Even if it was localized, it was quick daily information, which was also an incentive to learn how to read so that you could, be up to date on what's going on right now.
So my pattern recognition is going all over the place. So I've got a bunch of things before I forget them I got to say.
Sorry,
so no, it's okay. I'm just letting you know that I might forget where I'm heading with things if we take too long to unpack them, but I'm trying to get there. So one thing, if you just compare and contrast Gutenberg's printing press and that idea that people have to read on the other side, and we fast forward to personality types, it's awesome that you and me and the person listening right now, you listening right now with us, we know personality types, or at least you want to because you're listening to this show. You're like eager to learn and understand it. But it's kind of like having some printing presses. If people don't know how to read, it's not as valuable as if everybody knew personality type.
It's true.
Now, here's the challenge. This algorithm thing, I'm weaving this back in here, this idea. The progression of things being democratized on a long enough timeline also means that they are devalued on a long enough timeline because they become commodities.
Yeah, taken for granted.
Well, but they actually become commodified. You're taken for granted, but devalued in a way. I mean, think about Netflix, which we currently have, time of this recording. I think we're paying I think they raised on us. We're close to $20 or $25 now a month. I just saw that the other day. I'm horrified. Like, I thought it was like $10 a month. What in the world? Like, it's like high cost. I got to check it out and probably reduce the cost of it or something.
Yeah, but it's like literally thousands, if not.
But that's the point.
Yeah.
You subscribe for this one low fee. And for, let's say, $25 a month, at the time of this recording, you and I and our family can have multiple profiles and watch unlimited entertainment of past movies, and they're constantly putting out new stuff. Whereas if we want to go to the movie theater and watch a Hollywood movie that was presented to us, it's like at least $10 to $12 a person. If we want to take the whole family, it would be more than 1 month subscription to Netflix. So a lot of people stopped going to the movies. Content has been democratized and accessible at a lower price point. And now our movies suck. Like a lot of our content sucks. There's a couple good films and good stuff, but you and I were like the other day, like we went to watch a funny comedy and we're like, I don't think, do they even make funny like 90s style comedies anymore?
They do not.
Like, I don't think, like there's comedies, but I'm like, we watched a comedy, like, this is a comedy? Like what the hell why is this classified? So I'm watching the value of content drop. Movies are harder and harder and they have to have something that's not, you can't get on Netflix to attract people. It's got to have either a big name or some CGI or some reason why you'd go to the theater to watch this. Like the Dune movies that came out recently at the time of recording. They're big tentpole epic movies with great sound design and visuals. And so it's like people are like, oh, I want to go see it on a big screen. A lot of people have big screens in their homes now. Right. At least here in the West, in the United States. Not every country is the same. Obviously, you might be listening somewhere else. You don't have this access, but a lot of people in the West, especially the United States, have access to a lot of content and media and all this. So we have all of this, and I was thinking about these algorithms. They've kind of democratized and also have devalued content online because everybody can be a content creator, and everybody's got a measure of success at some level. You can get a few hundred people to watch your stuff and some success.
Do you remember when we used to get credibility because we were podcasters?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like when we said we're podcasters, people used to act like that was a big deal.
Like being on the radio or something.
Yeah.
Right? It used to be like being on TV.
Now it's like, oh yeah, I'm a podcaster too.
Yeah. And so is my brother.
And so is my brother.
My mom has a podcast. And,
Right.
and my dad's going to start one next week.
Yeah.
So I think that, I mean, that also the democratization of the access of distribution. I mean, at the time of this recording, Hollywood and the mainstream like legacy corporate media are kind of in meltdown freakout mode.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of election cycle. There's other platforms that are on the rise, like X at the time of this day. Who knows it'll go on in the future? There's a lot of attacks on it.
That's right. Mainstream media and Hollywood.
But the corporate elite people that would prefer to keep their money and their stuff don't really like a platform like X. Now they're going to blame it for all sorts of other, they've got all sorts of stuff they attach onto that.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, it's really about money, and they're worried that's going to take their revenue.
Isn't it always?
It's always about money, right? They'll couch it in racism or hate speech and all that stuff, but it really is about cash.
Yeah.
It's hardcore cash. That's what people care about. Power, cash, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, resource and cash and power. I think those are the things that people are really fighting over a lot. So when I see that, I go, I don't know if we're going to be able to recover.
I don't know either.
Because I don't think that the game of media is going to get more valuable.
Mm-mm.
It's only going to get more democratized and more equalized and more distributed. And the algorithms are only going to get tighter and more niched. And that's another product, the guy that founded the TED conferences, I can't remember his name, Chris Anderson, wrote that book, The Long Tail, like 15 years ago, about the idea like, look, everybody can publish. There's this long tail where everyone can find you online. And in fact, it's true. But that long tail is very thin. It goes on forever, but it's like everybody can have 300 subscribers on YouTube if you start a YouTube channel, basically.
Yeah.
And then like 5 people can have like millions.
Yeah.
So it's still kind of the old game of the have and have-nots, but it gives the have-nots in a way that are here enough to feel good about their putting their stuff out. And so I'm looking at this going, I don't know if it's a game that can be won. I don't even know if it's valuable in playing it. Maybe I'll be putting out some content. We're going to be putting out some content on TikTok and stuff like that very soon.
Yeah.
But I'm not really thinking that's going to be where value is given or received for the type of thing that we talk about, which is personal growth, personality types, and how to really become your whole self.
Well, and then there's another node in the system that has also hit at this time period and I just mentioned it a little earlier, but the absolute addiction that we collectively have, and it has hit young people like in a way that some of the other drugs have not yet or have never hit, is the onslaught of our addiction to unearned dopamine. We have so much addiction to unearned dopamine.
Yeah.
And unearned in the sense of like, there are legit ways to get dopamine. Working out is a legit way of getting dopamine. There's a bunch of them where we can earn our dopamine hit and we feel really good afterwards. When we don't earn our dopamine, when we just get it through like what the kids are calling doom scrolling, right? We just scroll, and we see all those little shorts and reels and all that stuff. And we just like keep going. And we get the next little dopamine hit. It's, there's a lot that can be and has been said about what it's doing to our brains, right? Yeah. And how it's literally rewiring us, how it makes us feel apathetic and how we don't want to work for anything anymore. Like we want everything unearned because we're getting all of our dopamine unearned. And so then the idea of like having to earn it sounds awful, even though that's the only path to actually like a centered soma, right? Like feeling good inside of our bodies.
Satisfaction,
like actual satisfaction.
Yeah.
That's right. So all the things that you're talking about are also hitting. And that's the reason why YouTube is in such competition, and so is Instagram in so much competition with TikTok, because TikTok is giving, it's the pusher, right? It's the supply it's supplying the drug of the unearned dopamine. And so everything wants to go that direction, which is how we all know that it's about power and money, not about like morality. So anytime any major corporation like makes some sort of morality stance, I have to kind of roll my eyes. I'm like, yeah, okay. And you're going to do what about the major problems of the world, right? The ones that you're feeding. Yeah. Yeah. As the supply of the drug. So, so we've got all of that, which everybody's talking about right now, is all this unearned dopamine everybody's getting. Yeah. And so right now we're at a time period in history where we're not only in the situation of everything is democratized, but also I mean, I went to a conference recently where the person on stage said, most of you do not and cannot read a book. Right. And it was skewed younger. The audience skewed younger.
Under 35.
Yeah.
Not just young people, but
it wasn't just young.
35.
Yeah. It was like there was plenty of people in their 40s and 50s there too. And he's just said, yeah, most of you do not and cannot read a book anymore.
Yeah.
And I paused and I was like, holy crap, I think that's true. I mean, I can think of so many people whose minds, you know, who are people, the kind of people I would think would have been readers in the past. And they're like, yeah, I never read. Right. They go to, you know, to websites.
I mean, I do read, but man, it's hard. It is so hard to read.
Yeah.
I'm kind of.
You're kind of there too?
I'm not there yet. I can read a book and I still have books I'm reading. But when I open the book, I'm like, what's going on online? Like, what's like, I want
the attention.
Like, it just, and it's also the book isn't backlit. I can't take it with me places. Like the phone is so much easier.
Yeah.
To just take, and it's just always there. It's like, I don't want to leave that book. I'll just leave that book home, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I started reading fiction again, like a few years ago, because I grew up reading fiction, and then I started reading nonfiction because I thought it made me like a more mature person or something. I don't know. There was some weirdness inside me that was like, you should only read nonfiction. That's what adults do.
That's when your gray hair started. When you started reading nonfiction.
I wish my gray hair started a long time ago. But I started. It's true. I started reading fiction again because I was like, I think it's good for the brain to read fiction. I was like, I don't know why I thought adults read nonfiction, but even if they do, I need to go back to reading fiction because I need to, you know, continue to have the capacity to imagine worlds in my head. So I went back to reading fiction, and so now I read fiction, right? And the thought that there was like most people can't read anymore was kind of horrifying to me. Now I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's an assertion that's well researched or if it was just like a wake up call to the audience, or I don't know why the person said that what they did. But I think it's probably true with especially younger people. And as I was saying, there's like a bunch of people whose minds I respect who say I never read, and I can't, and they almost say it as if like it's an affliction that is just unique to them, not as if they're a part of like an entire generation of people who cannot do it, not because their brain isn't wired that way, but because they have been deprogrammed from being able to do it.
Yeah.
Or not deprogrammed. They were never trained. It's a skill. It's basically a skill you have to develop, the capacity to be quiet and alone with your thoughts, to get through content and material so that you can develop reading comprehension and understand the purpose and point of what you are consuming with your mind. But it's like nutrients for your brain. Reading is basically health food for your brain.
Yeah.
And it kind of doesn't matter at this point what you're reading. Like, even if you're reading like salacious material, even if you're reading like the smuttiest smut that ever smutted, right? Like just, it kind of doesn't matter. Just the capacity to read at this point is way healthier for you than just sitting there and scrolling like this. So to go back to when I mentioned before, I can't say anything in 60 seconds, obviously. The reason why this contemporary world is such a challenge is because I keep thinking I've got to learn how to do it. I've got to learn how to just like be really simple in my thoughts and make sound bites and say them very fast. I mean, we have a couple sound bites, but like they're hard won and we don't have very many of them. But this idea of learning how to make all these points and learning how to capture attention in 60 seconds, it's like, I think I might be kind of ethically against it.
Yeah.
Like the reason why I'm pushing back isn't simply because I'm not able to say something in 60 seconds. It's that I don't want to provide the drug. Yeah. Right? Like I kind of want to force people to have to listen to longer form in order to get the complete thought. I kind of want to force, kind of in the same way that we massively curtail our daughter Piper's ability to consume information online, and we require her to read. Like we're always, and it's hard. It really is. It's hard to get. I mean, she has ESFP preferences, which is already a type that would much rather be doing stuff, right? Be active than reading. But despite that, I don't actually think it's her type that's the challenge. I think it's her generation that's the challenge. And so we basically insist that she reads. And at this point, she does. She reads for pleasure, right? She it's nice to see her do it, even though it was a bit of an uphill battle. But it's like, for the same reason that I insist that my daughter reads, I just can't bring myself to cater to 60-second reels and shorts. I just can't. It's like I have an ethical stance against it. And I don't know what to do about it because I know that this is like the backbone of our business is social media and clips and YouTube.
It's the backbone of connecting with people. I mean, it's not going back.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to be, I mean, there's going to be remnants of people that write paper letters to each other because they've decided that, right? But I think we are, and I don't think it's going to stop here. I think you think about artificial intelligence and AI. I mean, right now we have these clunky devices we have to pull up and we punch the data into. And then we have to, send it to somebody and they have to undo the data and read it on their side. I mean, we already know things like Neuralink are coming.
Yeah, it's going to be a chip in our brain.
You're able to like think the information as fast as it's being published, or have it come in and out of your brain. Now people go, I'm never going to do that. It's like, there are people also that like in the 1900s that I'm never putting those electric light things in my house. And the Amish are the only ones that still don't have them, right? At least here in the United States.
I'll never get one of those horseless carriages.
Yeah, those horseless carriages. There's like Grandpa Simpson type statements. Right. I think we all say it. I'm not going to join that digital new world, but it's like by the time it's here, you don't really like.
It won't need your participation. It will not care if you're one of the people who's staying out.
Yeah. Outside the Amish, there's hardly anybody in the United States, I think, that's living without houses and no electricity and burning fires and going to bed with the sun. I mean, that just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Culturally, it'd be impossible to be part of modern culture if that was your lifestyle. And the Amish have to be separated from us. We live here in Pennsylvania. There's tons in Lancaster County. And they have to like live a separate life because it's really hard to be in sync if everybody else is digital and you're not.
Yeah.
So this isn't going anywhere. It's only going to be like escalated to the point where people are going to want to enter digital worlds.
I had a moment of wondering if we were going to have like upset Amish people. And I'm like, oh no, we don't have to worry about that.
I did read something though. Amish are okay with electricity as long as it comes from, there's certain Amish sects that are okay. Sects like SECTS,
right?
Not SEX,
right?
That are okay with electricity as long as it doesn't come from a centralized power grid.
Oh,
so if they have solar panels and battery packs, they're okay with it.
Yeah,
it's just the actual principle is not technology. It's they don't want to be controlled by the system.
Well, there's definitely some wisdom in that.
I'm learning to be very sympathetic to this idea.
I am too.
Now that they want us all on electric cars, they just turn you off when you do something wrong. Like, oh, you're done, Joel. You don't go anywhere this weekend. It's like getting grounded by dad, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the government will do that to us. I think that's what they're heading toward in some ways. Now, it could be a good future too. We'll see. The point of all this is that things are escalating. They're getting democratized and devalued. And so one thing that you and I are looking for as we think about our purpose, which I still don't know if we can get to purpose now that we've been I don't know how long we've gone here.
I'll figure out a way.
I mean, give it its due conversation. We could touch on it lightly, but I think there's probably more to it than just like if they're trying to discover it. The purpose we have to find, we know what we want to talk about, but we have to find ways to communicate that's different than how everybody else is. And so one of the things that I'm finding is if we can figure out a way to bring personality types into an operational level, cryptocurrency is having a trouble with this, right? The reason why crypto hasn't kicked yet is it's not operational.
Right.
It's still an asset class you buy and hold like gold or silver, right? You don't spend silver. When you buy a silver coin or silver bullion or gold, you buy it and you put it in some like a safe place, whether that's a safety deposit box or you hold it at your house or you just have it on deposit somewhere, right? In a facility and you bought it but they have a receipt of it. But you don't use it as a currency to trade. And so crypto is having this challenge right now in that it's not actually being utilized. No one's trading with it. It's not an actual currency yet. I mean, when I say that, obviously people are, but it's not to the where I don't go to the store and buy gum with it. I don't go and buy a cup of coffee with it.
It's limited.
It's very limited currency trading. And so until everybody starts using it, it's always going to just be an asset class. And it's going to be more theoretical. And it's going to be fought over and it's going to be volatile and it's going to be confusing and it's going to be speculative and it's going to be abstract and it's going to be something that people don't utilize or use in their lives. And as I think about it, I think personality types are in a very similar place that crypto is in that it's very, very few people are operating it. Very few people are trading with it. I mean, they are, but it's like, it's an abstract trading. It's all cerebral. Nothing's physically being, like no value exchange is happening with it. It's all just talking about it kind of like crypto. Like what's the blockchain? And it's all abstractions.
Right.
And I think until personality type becomes a currency, of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
Not really currency, but until it's traded, it's operated, we do something. And this is why we do our personality profiler training. I mean, it's an operational level of personality type.
Right.
It's designed to create a methodology where two people come together and they have a conversation and they help determine somebody's best fit type.
Yeah.
And it's designed to say, this isn't like crypto on a blockchain. This is like a currency in the moment. We're value exchanging. We're creating a moment here with each other.
Yeah.
And so I think that the value of personality type has to be found in the midst of it's going to get sucked into this algorithmic vortex of terribleness.
Yeah.
And it's going to get more tokenized and over defined, and it's going to lose its power and its actual usefulness because it's going to just get sucked into that world. There's so much more there. So I think our job here at Personality Hacker, and if you're listening right now, you're the third person in this, I think the three of us, our job is to find ways to operate personality type. We're going to be giving a talk very soon at the APTI, the Association of Psychological Type. Carol Linden and some of the people there invited us to come and talk. And we're going to be talking about some of these ideas with that conference. This is the type professionals that gather together and people that are using type or type enthusiasts. This is the original organization. And I think that when we give that talk, this is what I want to communicate to people is we've got to make this operational if it's going to last into the new saculum, into the new world that's coming.
Well, and to speak to APTI and sort of the, hearkening back to an old guard way of doing things, type became as big as it did in large part because people were using it in a professional sense. They were learning about it in their jobs. They were learning about it in team building exercises.
Corporate.
It was like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the MBTI. Its original purpose was to help women during World War II to find jobs that would resonate with their personality style because the men had all gone to war. And so it was a way for women to kind of understand where they would fit in if they had a career, if they were going to go to fill some of these positions or jobs. And so it started out as, you could call it operational. It started out as something that had a very practical application almost immediately. And then after decades, it was a big piece in career, in the corporate world. And then around the time period, probably after John Beebe reintroduced Jungian functions into the type communities, and then sort of when we started coming up in the aughts, it stopped being so much about corporate, at least for us, and it started being more about personal development. And so the desire was to operate it in terms of like growth and development, becoming a better version of yourself. Originally, it was a relational tool for people who were not relatives. Corporate, team building, careers, jobs. You had to learn how to get along with these people who you didn't love, who were not part of your family, who were not best friends, you weren't friends. And so it really greased the wheels of people you spent 40 hours a week with that you didn't have any other relationship with, so to speak of, unless you were lucky enough to like find friends at work or whatever. But it was really meant to make sure that, relational challenges were not stopping your business from being able to do what it needed to do.
Well, people online were able to find each other that were into this is really what you're speaking to.
Well, I think when I was coming up in the aughts, then it was clear that it didn't just have a corporate application, but that it had a personal growth application, which I think was also, like I said, something that was kind of coming up in the 90s as well, the 90s and the aughts. And that was still operational because people were using it to understand themselves enough to mature, right? To become better versions of themselves and to mature and to kind of understand why things were the challenge that could have been through the lens of functions. And so you had more books written, like Naomi Quenk's Was That Really Me? Talking about the inferior function and how we can get in a grip. And we had books like Lenore Thompson's book, Your Personality, Personality Types and Owner's Manual, which kind of talked a little bit more about the functions and how that shows up in type and how, people can sort of become better.
Yeah.
So there was more material coming out during that time period. And like you said, people were then able to find each other online through ENTP.org or infj.com or like all these message boards, forums, message boards, bulletin boards where they could talk to each other. Personality Cafe came online at around, I don't remember exactly, which is astonishingly is still a thriving community. It's probably been around for 15, 20 years. But there were all these places that people could meet up. And then expertise got democratized, just like you're talking about the democratization of everything. And now everybody knew about type. And type is really, it's really seductive in this way. Because if you're the only person in your world that is familiar with type, it automatically makes you the expert in your life around it. Like, even if you just know the bare minimum, you are immediately the most knowledgeable person in your world around type, which gives us a false sense of expertise. Because, and so then we enter communities of people who know type. And it's a weird, you kind of have a weird sort of, I don't know, like moment when you go, oh, maybe I'm not the only person who knows this. Now, initially, it's very exciting to talk to somebody else who knows type too. But what if they came to a different conclusion you did about what it means to have an auxiliary function or what this particular function looks like, or they just came to a different understanding and they're the expert in their world too.
Yeah.
So you start arguing with each other about what these things actually mean. And pretty soon, like, it's really hard for the ego not to get bruised. So I think what happened during the teens is that type expertise became democratized, and then it became about who knows more.
Yeah.
Right. And then influencers started to come up, and these influencers had a lot of influence about how people learned type. Some went really complicated and like filleted out systems and turned it into a big, massive juggernauts of content. Others were a little bit more growth oriented, or some people got into coaching, or others got kind of into entertainment.
Frank James is a good example of that.
You got it. Yep, exactly. So some went the entertainment route. But I think in all of that, what we lost was, like you said, the operational component, sort of the heart of it initially. And the heart of it was not just a corporate or like a career, like a find your career tool. But the heart of it originally was therapy.
Yeah.
That's Jung's original intent with all of the archetypes of personality, was to, what is it? Like all these chapters in psychological types is like the problem of.
Yeah.
So for him, it was a diagnostic tool that helped people, heal and have a healthier psyche.
And it was emergent.
From
his sessions with clients is where all this archetypical stuff came from. It emerged out of his experience.
Yeah.
So he's with people in session. He's watching this happen. He's seeing patterns, and now he's writing about it. He's creating a typology system.
Yep.
Like, it's very, I would say, industrialized with the MBTI instrument. Like with the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the instrument that people use, that's what MBTI stands for. It's the written test or assessment, not a test, but assessment of personality type. It very much made it into like multiple choice, Western, modernist, mid-century America style of a system.
Yeah.
And we also see that there's a limit to that, because we now with AI and technology, and Dr. Dario Nardi, our friend and colleague who comes to our events all the time. In fact, he'll be at Profiler Training in just a few weeks here, speaking on the main stage yet again. I'm just excited about that. And I think he's going to do a bonus day on Sunday again, which is really cool. He's going to talk about some of his concept for his new book. I'm going to see if I can get him to do some EEG stuff on the stage, which don't let me forget about talking about EEG on this too.
Okay.
What was I saying? That was like 3 little tangents. And now I lost my original point. What did I just say? I said something
we were talking
around
about the assessment.
Oh yeah. So the Myers-Briggs assessment, it's very Western. And I think to Dario's point and the other young people that are in his like classes that are working with him in the EEG, they're like, we can do a lot more. We don't have to stop with, just, we can go into subtypes, for example. And that's what we do with the EEG stuff, right? And we can look at those, or we can have all sorts of variants of these. We can cross and slice and dice data and do more. Now, I think we should, again, be careful, because the more you do that, you could lose the thread of operation again. So it's keeping it simple enough to operate, but complex enough to understand, to get full understanding.
Yeah.
That's what we want. It's like a tension point, not too much on one side, not too much on the other.
That's the key. The key is that it has to have a tension point between theory and operation, or practical application.
And attention between subject and object too.
That's
right?
exactly.
It's not a completely 100% subjective system.
Mm-mm.
You do have to have outside objective measurements out here, but certainly not a 100% object. There is no such thing as a 100% objective or subjective system.
Exactly.
Right? They always are tensions.
It's a tension point of
opposites.
the two.
And so the complexity, simplicity, objective versus subjective, like all these things are tension points. And we know that from reality, like everything works that way.
Yeah.
So as we think about these things, then as we think about, okay, this can be democratized in the way it is, that's cool. I think I think it's good though, that's been democratized, right? A lot of people know about type. To go back to the Gutenberg press idea, well, now there's more people to get an owner's manual. You should get an owner's manual if you're personality type, by the way. Personalityhacker.com. Go over, get an owner's manual for your type. We got one for all 16 types. They're incredible. They will change your life. Go do it now. If you're listening.
You'll have an exciting life with the
You'll have an exciting life with owner's manual. No, it's true though. I mean, it really is an incredible program, an incredible course. I think you should go get it. And we're continually adding to it. But it's good. More people can access this podcast because more people know about type because it has been democratized. So I think that's excellent.
Yes.
More people can talk about it. More people can become to profiler training. They have a basic building block of that. So it's now like, okay, I want a methodology to formalize this.
Yes. And the substrate underneath this though is to go back to this idea of operation. And we talked about the only physical product we sell is cards.
Yeah.
And I think when I say I don't know if I can get into the 60-second game, right? Like I'm not sure if I can do that. What's great about type is that when you know type, it actually turns complex thoughts into 60-second games. That's the point. If I say I have ENTP preferences, I just communicated a chapter's worth of content to another person. Yeah. That's the point of it. The point is that it does sort of pair thing or distill things down into something that's quite dense, actually. And if we can figure out the next level of meeting the world where it's at, which is what we're working on right now, maybe not with, this clear, clean thought that takes a while to fillet out and, sort of my preferred way of thinking, like real thought labor, which nobody on the planet wants to do other than me and maybe some other TPs out there.
Yeah.
But this like really, sort of intense, labor intensive thought process, if we can take the benefit of those thought processes and smuggle them into something that is accessible and operational and something that could fit into something that's 60 seconds, which actually does just show that there's more to this, right? Almost like cookie crumbs to lead to a much more fleshed out, helpful concept. I think that's the name of the game. That's if we can figure that out, that's the way. That's the way of the future.
Yeah, and I think we're talking about a little bit moving personality types from an articulate, so something we articulate, to something we demonstrate. It's got to be action-based, operational, demonstratable, and I think in there, that's where it starts to become very real in people's lives.
And it's when it's viral.
Yeah.
Because people don't, I mean, the big challenge everybody has is how do I get my family and friends into type? And it's like, for a long time, I was like, I don't know, they have to be bit by a bug. I mean, how did you get into type? You're just naturally interested in it. It just struck you.
Yeah.
And it's way too complicated to kind of drag somebody into it for the most part. But if you can demonstrate the benefits it has, if you can demonstrate and make it sort of fun and interesting and operational, in the same way we were talking about cryptocurrency, right? Like right now, it's like, how do I convince people that crypto is a good idea, right? Because there's a bunch of people in my life that thinks it's a terrible idea, and it's like, I don't know, like you're probably not because they can't buy a pack of gum with it, so they probably don't care. But when it becomes something that we just are all using, then all of a sudden they don't have to quote unquote get interested in it. They just are using it. It's just a part of their life. And I think type can fill a similar niche if we can crack the code.
I think that's so key when people see it demonstrated. Like there's so many people that have joined our personality profiler training course after being personality profiled by one of our other students. They had an experience. It was operational. They sat down with them for a session like, wait, you just told me about my stuff about myself that my partner doesn't know, my kids don't know, my parents didn't know about. I don't think I even knew some of these things you just illustrated to myself, but when you said them, they're resonant and I kind of see what you're talking about. How did you learn this? And then they talk about personality profiler training and then people are like, oh, I want to join too. And so But so many students come through just by being profiled as the client on the client side because it's so real. Yeah. It's so visceral. Right. And I think even like Jonathan, me and you are exploring these card decks, right? And these card readings. Imagine if personality type was kind of not the woo-woo part of tarot, but what if it was like a tarot card reading where you're kind of like helping people understand the personality type through like a reading of sorts? Like, here's kind of how your mind's working. So it's very tangible and visceral. It's like gameplay. It's short. It's very tight. It's like a very contained experience, and it feels operational. Yep. And then you forgot to mention about EG, but I remembered for myself, so I'm going to mention it too. Okay. We're also working with Dario Nardi and Darren Yee, who's been through our profile training and our PLP courses, to develop some, and other students as well, but they're the two primary ones driving this, and one of Dario's colleagues in France, working on creating experiences for people to have EEG brain imaging readings, more in a laboratory fashion. It's not going to be a scientific, like, here's a report exactly what your personality type is, and all the details, but it's yet another piece of the puzzle. It's yet another angle to slice and dice. And it could definitely give you an insight into two primary things. One is your personality subtype, because it can talk about those. And we've talked about those on the show, especially in the series on careers, incredible series on that. And then the other thing it can show you is the past, present, future orientation of your mind. So it's a measuring tool. So it can find hidden talents through the EEG and kind of your subtypes, but it also can find the timeline. And so we've noticed that when a client comes to us and works with us, like in coaching or one of our courses, and usually we have big, high level courses. Like we have some lower level products and things, but usually they're bigger, like 6-month commitments. People do like 3 of those. It's like 18 months, sometimes 4, like 2 years. And then I was talking to Darren Yee the other day, and he's like, yeah, actually on the EEG, we see it takes about 2 years for brain chemistry to change. We measured on the EEG readings, and we see how somebody's personality type was wired here, and then we watch it 2 years later. We're doing a reading. We're doing the past, how their brain was at puberty, how it is now, and then we have a fast action mode where we can see what it's going to in the future. And then 2 years later, you can kind of see that it became that in the future, and we can do the reading on that too. So we can now we have a measuring tool for personality types and seeing how, not for types to know your type, like to discover your type, but to see the changes in your type and the expression of it over time. Because that's really what you and I are concerned about. Not so much profile training helps determine type, but once you determine that, it'd be nice to measure how the work you've done, the personal growth work you've done and you've operated with, like what does it look like, a snapshot. Yeah. So the EEGs, I think, are another tangible place for operation.
Okay. So I figured out how to weave in purpose and Dharma. All right, so I'm going to do that because you're like, we don't have to worry about that, but I'm like, I'm going to find a way.
Can we still record another podcast on it, or is this going to shoot
probably.
our ability?
Oh, no. I was just going to weave in my personal Dharma or my purpose, which is to help people program their own minds. This comes from me having to reprogram myself after I left a cult. And also, I believe because I have ENTP preferences, introverted thinking or accuracy is associated with my parental energy. And so there's a big part of my purpose or my Dharma that is to help people figure out how to program their own minds. And the programs that we run, and then with like EEG technology, which helps people observe how they have changed over time, especially when they have taken control of those changes. Right? Like they're wired a certain way, and then they do substantial work. You know, like you said, people will, when they take our big courses, they almost always stay with us for at least 3, sometimes 4 of them. It's very common. Yeah. And then to watch somebody go through that 2-year process, and sometimes it's not a full 2 years, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's, sometimes it's just one program, 6-month program. But oftentimes they're kind of with us for a couple of years, and we thought that was an interesting phenomena. And I think we realized it's because that's about how long you need to start to really take over programming your own mind. And that's my purpose, is to help people figure out how to do that for themselves. Because as Jack Kornfield says, if you don't control, or if you don't program your mind, the world will program it for you. Yeah. And so you have to take conscientious control over that. And I think that's why EEGs as part of this operational concept is so powerful, because it helps chart that. Like you get a snapshot of the before and you get a snapshot of the after. And you go, wow, I guess I actually did change. Now, the world will program it for you indicates that you probably would have changed in that 2 years anyway. Yeah. But did you direct it yourself? Did you go, are you watching yourself like not just have these hidden skills or talents, but you're capitalizing on them and you're changing your life to help you be more in alignment with yourself? And you can watch some of that progress happen.
Yeah.
So I think, so I wove in purpose, not how to find one's purpose. We'll talk about that in a future episode. But I wove in the concept of purpose. Yeah. I got it in there. I slid it in.
Very good.
Yeah.
I set up a website, the casual one. I don't know how developed it'll be by the time of this recording is released, but it's personalityneuroscience.com, which is we're starting to build the building blocks for some of this for, more of the public to access it. We're going to do it through live events at first and hopefully create some container events. And if you have any kind of an event coming up, you're listening right now and you're an event producer or somebody that has, I know Darren just went to, I think it was Tiago Forte's event, his second brain summit, and did some EEG there. The people didn't really know about the personality type, but it still was a great value because it shows the hidden talents and it could still show the past, present, future orientation of the brain, and then the subtypes. So it's really interesting. So if you are into personality types, and you're obviously you are because you're listening to this, head over there. We're gonna hopefully have some places for you to have some of this available. I'd like to create more events going forward. Yeah, and every event that we're doing, we are inviting people out to do EEGs. Yeah, we're trying to keep doing that as much as we can. So at our profiler training, if you are a profiler training student, you're listening to this, there's going to be opportunity at the profiler training live event coming up in just a couple weeks. At our personality life path mentorship, which is going to be happening in a few months when we open up that enrollment at the live event there. We're going to have EEG EEG readings there too. We're going to continue to offer these at any event that we host. Yep. As long as our practitioners can make it. And not just because it's like a cool gadget, not just because it's like a cool, fun thing, but because it really does help bring things real. It helps to make it operational. It gives valuable information that helps people make different decisions in their lives. Yeah. And take control over the direction that their life is going. I would love to hear from you. You've been listening along to me and Antonia talk. You haven't had a microphone. What else could be operational about personality type? Like if you think about how to make it actionable, demonstratable, not just articulate and theoretical, but how do we practice it? How do we do it? We talked about maybe cards and maybe gameplay at some point. Maybe EEGs are a good way to do it. Profiling sessions as we teach our personality profilers. That's where we started with this. It was conversational. It was a little bit more articulate than the other two, but that's easy to start with. But it was a two-way dialogue, right? And it was a cool operational framework. But what do you think? I would love to get some ideas going around this, or maybe you've had experiences in maybe other similar disciplines. You've said, hey, over here in this other cross discipline, they've made it practical and operational in this way. You guys should look at this. This would be really powerful for Personality Hacker and some of the things you're trying to bring into the world. And you're part of it too, if you're listening here, because we want you to be part of this entire community and movement together. But come over to personalityhacker.com and directly below this episode, make your voice heard. Share with us any ideas you have there. But you can also ask a question, share a comment, or share your story about maybe how you see things being democratized or how you've seen something be operational. We'd love to hear from you. Again, come over to personalityhacker.com, make your voice heard. Yeah. And if you enjoyed the episode, you can subscribe in a bunch of different places. We're on various platforms all over, on Apple Podcasts and on Spotify and lots of different places. So go ahead and subscribe. Even if on YouTube, sometimes you don't see our content. Search for it. Yeah, go find it. Search for it. That might be what you have to do. I realized I didn't even talk about my purpose. I guess you were landing that. I was so eager to hear more ideas. Why don't you hold it? Unless you really want to say it, why don't we hold it for the next episode when we talk about Dharma and purpose? Fair enough. Okay. My name is Joel Mark Witt. And I'm Antonia Dodge. And we'll talk with you on the next Personality Hacker Podcast.